Hi, welcome back to my channel, A Bookish Persuasion. My name is Amanda. If you're new here, great, so am I. We can be new together. Today I wanted to do my November wrap-up. I know it's January at this point, but I had been planning to start to do my BookTube channel around that November time frame. And I was always anticipating to start in either December or January, so it would make sense that I would be prepared for the December or January time frame. So it does look like we're starting in January, so hopefully you guys like the books that we're going to talk about. So there's 9 books in total that I read in November. I keep a bullet journal. You can see I'm not super artistic, so I'm not going to do like a lot of bullet journal showings, but I read 9 books in total, and that was a total of 3,098 pages. So a lot of shorter books this month. I'm pretty sure all but one were YA, so young adult. And a lot of them were like a fantasy type category. But so what I plan to do is just briefly talk about each one, tell you the rating that I had, talk about like the characters and the storyline, just so you have a better idea of what the books are about. And then we can just go from there. So without further ado, let's get started. So the first book I want to talk about is Wilder Girls by Rory Power. This is kind of like a YA dark contemporary to it. So basically we're following we're following one character, but there's 3 main characters. There's Byatt, Hetty, and Reese. And basically they're all at this girls' boarding school. And they're on this island, I want to say. And all of a sudden, this disease called the tox appears. And basically it makes everybody sick, but not like a cold or a flu kind of sick. It makes them have like abnormalities or a mutation of some sort, and the whole island itself seems to be affected by this tox. So basically the government and everybody puts this island on quarantine. So the whole premise sounds super cool, right? Like I love the whole idea of all girls boarding school because I like schools, I like friendship groups, like so the 3 friends, I wanted to really get to know about them, and I like the dark mystery element of this mysterious tox that's causing all these issues and causing them to be quarantined. It was okay. I thought the idea was really, really good. I just didn't like this one that much. I did give it a 3-star. I did think there was a female-female romance in this book. And again, I liked the dark quality, but overall it was just okay. I would have liked a little bit stronger of the friendship. I would have liked a little bit more world building about the island itself, a little bit more insight into the tox itself. So that would have been really cool, just to get a little bit more from that. The next book I want to talk about is The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes by Suzanne Collins. Everybody, I hope, knows who Suzanne Collins is. She was the author of the Hunger Games series. This is a prequel to that series. And in this prequel, we're following Coriolanus Snow, so President Snow as a child, and we're in the midst of the 10th Hunger Games. So basically, we're learning how the Hunger Games came to be. This is not the world that we saw in the series that first came out. Since this is the prequel, this is what happened before those Hunger Games. So this is how the Hunger Games came to be, basically how Coriolanus Snow was involved, what his role was in building the games into what they were today, or what we now know to be the games. So basically we're following him, and he is a mentor. This is the first year that the Hunger Games introduces mentors, and he is the mentor for the 12th district girl, whose name is Lucy Gray Bayard. And so basically we're following the adventure of his learning to be a mentor, because this was the first year they're doing it. We're following this tribute, Lucy Gray Bayard, who's actually a pretty cool character. And we're just following the whole story of the Hunger Games itself. It does talk to us about the Hunger Games. It's not as detailed and elaborate as the games we're used to. It's very bare bones, kind of. A lot of things go wrong. And ultimately at the end, we all kind of knew that this would fall flat. You know, it was just okay. It wasn't bad. I liked getting to know how the Hunger Games came to be. I liked that we got a little bit of a backstory about Tigris in here, one of the characters from the original series. And I liked how we got to know a lot about President Snow before he became President Snow. But I felt like the whole book was one story about him and building up this character that was complete opposite of what we came to know him as, the villain in this original series. And then at the end, he turns into the villain all of a sudden. And I didn't like that part. I wanted more build up to the villain. I didn't want it just to be an instant switch. Also, the character Lucy Gray Bayard, I really liked her character. I just don't feel like she fit into this world, and I don't feel like she fit in as a tribute character. So otherwise, I would still read it if you're a fan of the Hunger Games series. Still a good book. I gave it a 3-star. Not my favorite, but I definitely recommend reading it, just because if you're a Hunger Games fan like me, you can't not read it, so it makes sense. The next book I want to talk about is Shadow and Bone by Leigh Bardugo. This is the first book in the Grishaverse trilogy. I think it's a trilogy. I think so. Yeah, it's a trilogy. So this is the first book in the Grishaverse trilogy, and it is being made into a Netflix show. That's not why I read it. I wanted to read it because, one, my husband bought me the beautiful editions of this series a couple years ago, and I haven't read it. But I've also heard so much hype about these books, and I feel bad to say I only gave it a 3-star, and honestly, it's strictly because it was not a bad book at all. My own personal reading tastes have evolved and changed now that I'm a 30-year-old woman. It's just super weird to think about. But I'm just not as into YA fantasy as I was before. I'm still going to be reading lots of YA fantasy, but I'm thinking they may not receive as high of ratings from me as more adult fantasy. So just a caution there that if you're still in the YA fantasy realm, this was a very good book. Not one of my favorites, but again, that was just a personal preference. So this is a YA fantasy. We're following Alina, her friend Mal, and then this character called the Darkling. And basically, Alina and Mal are soldiers in this regiment, and they're also cartographers where they create maps. And then one day their regiment is attacked, and Alina has this magical power, a really rare power that just shows up, and she saves the whole regiment. And the Darkling brings her to this training, and she's basically going to become what is called a Grisha, and something just doesn't seem quite right. Her power, she is told, will actually destroy the Shadowfold, which is like the darkness that all the bad comes from in this world. So it's a very interesting type of magic, but again, I personally just wasn't into the YA. However, the stag makes a lot of sense by the time you get to the end of the book. So the cover makes a lot of sense. So I like the premise. I didn't mind the characters. I didn't mind the romance because it's a friends to romance kind of book. Overall, it was okay. I definitely want to finish the series. I do want to check out the Netflix show because I'm thinking I may like that a lot more. The next book that I read was The Great Gatsby by F. Scott Fitzgerald. I actually read this as part of the Clear Your Shit Readathon challenge to read the book that's been on my shelf the longest. So I've seen the movie, so I knew what this is about. It is a classic historical fiction book set in like the 20s, I believe. And it's about a character called Jay Gatsby, his love interest Daisy, and then our narrator, whose name I believe is Nick. And basically what happens is Nick moves into this house that's actually right next to Jay Gatsby's giant mansion, and Jay Gatsby throws all of these really ridiculously lavish parties, and we find out it's because he's really just been trying to get in touch with his old flame Daisy. And Nick happens to be Daisy's cousin, so Gatsby starts to get closer to Nick to try and get Daisy back, and we just learn what happens to them throughout the narrator's eyes, since he's kind of like the third person watching this story happen. So I'm sure you're all familiar with this book. I can't say it was bad. It's not my personal favorite. So I gave it a 3-star, but it's a classic. I understand why it's a classic. I understand why lots of people would like this book. Just me personally, it was okay. Not bad, not great, just okay. So if you like classics, you're probably gonna like this one. The next book I read is The Betrothed by Kiera Cass. Now, I picked this up because I read Kiera Cass's series, the Selection series, and I loved it. I probably read it, I don't know, like mid-20s, early 20s. It's a very fluffy YA dystopian romance, kind of like The Bachelor, but in a princess setting. So I really, really enjoyed that series. Then I read her next book, which was not related to that, called The Siren, and I really enjoyed that book. So I was like, oh, okay, I've liked her other 2 books. Let me pick this up. Very light, very frothy author. There's not much depth. They're very short. They don't take a long time to read. And sometimes you just want something a little bit lighter and frothy. This was bad. I gave it a 2-star. I'm so disappointed because it felt like a rewrite of The Selection, but bad. So basically, the characters that we're following are Hollis, our main character, so I'm assuming the person on the cover, which this cover is beautiful. I just want to say, great job on the cover. Then we follow King Jameson and a character called Silas. So basically, Hollis is in the kingdom with a bunch of other noble daughters trying to win the hand of the king. So King Jameson notices her, he chooses her, he proposes to her, and she's building up this life to become queen. And then Silas and his family appear at court, and they're seeking refuge from their own personal kingdom. And Hollis and Silas start to grow close and develop a relationship, and she eventually tries to pursue that relationship, and we figure out what happens in this book. I hated the ending. Really didn't mind it at the beginning. I thought the beginning was good. I like the whole royal aspect. I like kind of ditzy characters, I guess you could say. Like light characters that don't have a lot of depth to them. I liked the friend Delia Grace. I liked King Jameson. I didn't care about Silas. I'm very disappointed this whole relationship with Silas took precedent and that this whole relationship with Silas took over the whole end of the story. But basically there was no ending. There was not a conclusion. It was definitely a cliffhanger for the second book. I don't know if I'm gonna read the second book yet or not, because I kind of have a feeling what happened at the end of this one may not be what actually happened. I don't know. I'm going to have to decide at that time when it comes out if I care enough to continue, because I have liked all of her other books. I'm just so disappointed by this one. So again, you guys might like it. I don't know, but I mean, look at these end papers too. Isn't that gorgeous? It's just such a pretty book. I'm so disappointed. Anyway. I still liked 5 of her other books. I still liked 5 of Kiera Cass's other books. So I'll still give her a go in the future, I think. I think that is my decision. I think I will read the second one because I have liked all of her other books. So we'll just give this one a write-off, and maybe if I don't like the second one, we just don't like that series. We'll find out. Next is Words on Bathroom Walls by Julia Watson. Now this is a YA contemporary with a little bit of a romance thrown in there. This is about a character called Adam, and it's written in the form of journal entries to his doctor or psychiatrist. So Adam actually has schizophrenia. He was diagnosed with it very young. So we get to learn a little bit about his experience before being on medication and then after being on medication. And we get to learn about his relationship with Maya. And I really enjoyed this book. I have two qualms about it. One is that it's not owned voices as far as I know. And 2 is that the author makes it very clear that she took a lot of creative liberties with the whole aspect of trying to describe the experience of somebody with schizophrenia. With that being said, I still gave this a 5-star. I really love books about mental illness. I think this did a really good job of talking about somebody's experience about schizophrenia. The thing that was interesting to me was I do feel like it gave me a better understanding. So even though none of this was real, this is not a real person, his experience wasn't real, I still liked learning about what he was seeing and experiencing in his head. I liked that it wasn't just he was seeing things or seeing people. It brought it into a full-on story, and it created all these other characters that were part of him. I really liked the romance because it focuses not on the romance turning bad because of his mental illness, but more of we can be more accepting of mental illness, and just because you have a mental illness doesn't mean that you can't develop a relationship when you're younger. I liked that part, and I thought the relationship was very good. So I did give this a 5 stars. I would recommend it. Again, I would prefer to find something with own voices. So if any of you know something that has own voices with a character with schizophrenia, I would love to read that. So give me some recommendations in the comments if you can. Okay. Next is Sweet Evil by Wendy Higgins. So this is the first of a series. There's 4 books, but one of them is told in the male character's perspective. So there's really just 3 books. I've actually read all 3 since then. I got this outlet years ago. No idea what it's about, but I was intrigued because I don't know. It felt very Twilight-like. And yes, we all know Twilight is problematic. But when I was a 13 to 16-year-old girl, I was a Twihard fan. Huge fan of Twilight. But now, you know, being older, being more aware of relationships and problematic relationships, I can understand. Anyway, so this is a YA fantasy. So we're following a character named Anna Witt, and then her love interest, or soon-to-be love interest, Kaiden Rowe. I'm not exactly sure how to pronounce it. I did listen to some of this on audiobook, but I can't remember how they pronounce his name. So basically, Anna is this good girl character. She reveals that she can actually sense and see other people's emotions. And so I just figured, okay, cool. That was the whole part of that. That was what made this story like a fantastical kind of magical realism story. But then we find out that Kaiden Rowe has the same ability. And we learn that it's because both Kaiden and Anna and some of the other characters that you'll meet in this book are descendants of fallen angels. So they have this ability, and they're all a descendant of a fallen angel whose role is over a particular sin, like greed and lust and gluttony and envy and all sorts of different sins. So it's very, very, I want to say cheesy, because the sole purpose of these children that are called Nephilim in this book, because they're descendants of these fallen angels, is to cause others, so humans, to sin. If I was a 16-year-old girl reading this, I would have probably really liked it. Now, I gave it a 3-star. It probably is going to be at a 2.5 star, because I hated the focus on virginity and how that was like the ultimate sin, it felt like. And I think that's such an overdone trope. I think it's awful to put so much focus on that. I mean, you can definitely make a book about all the sins and how there's a child from a fallen angel that's supposed to influence others around them to sin, but why make that one the most important? Like, I don't get that. So for that reason, I don't recommend it to other people. Was it a good story? Sure. Because we also find out that Anna is not only a child of a fallen angel, but she's also a child of an angel up in heaven. And so she's like a good and bad. And so basically the whole series follows them along. I do like their characters. I will say that. I liked their love story overall, talking about the whole series. So next is actually going to be a book called Ashlards, which I heard about off TikTok. So this is by Scott Reintgen. I don't know how to pronounce his name, but I love this cover, by the way. And I thoroughly enjoyed this book. I gave it a 4-star. So basically we're following 3 different characters. So it's 3 different point of views. There's Imelda, Pippa, and Adrian. And I don't know if I'm saying Imelda's name right. I'm sorry. I listened to this on audiobook as well while reading it, but I have no idea. But basically, we're following these 3 characters as they prepare for a Phoenix race, which happens once a year, and the winner wins. I forget what they win. I think they win like whatever they want. I don't know, like maybe money or fame or whatever. I don't remember. The whole point was you followed these 3 characters as they're preparing for the race, and then also while the race is progressing, and then once the race is finished. So we do have a conclusion in this book. It's set up for a sequel, which I do plan to read because I did enjoy this. Now, Imelda, she's a Davidian, which is a character that in this world that is poor. She doesn't have the ability or resources to be able to participate in this Phoenix race until she makes a video, basically like a YouTube video, I would assume, and she becomes nominated as the fan favorite in the races. So that's Imelda. She's our underdog. And then Pippa, she's actually the daughter of these 2 champion racers. So she's won a lot of other races in the past. Everybody expects her to win. She's like royalty, basically. She's like the social media queen of the Phoenix races. And then we have Adrian, who's known as a longhand. Basically, those characters are really wealthy, but they're considered rebels. So they just want the whole system to kind of fall down, I guess. And so Adrian is kind of the symbol of the rebellion. So we follow them all. And the really cool thing about this book, the thing that I loved, if this had not been part of this book, I would not have enjoyed it, was the fact that they are racing Phoenix horses. So these horses live throughout the day, they die at night. At night, they become a pile of ashes, and our 3 characters and the other racers have to protect their ashes because they can be sabotaged or contaminated. And that does happen in this book, which is, I think, just such a good element. But the whole really fun part is each morning they have to create a brand new Phoenix horse using the horse's ashes and alchemy. And they can mix a couple different ingredients together to make this whole brand new horse. Super cool. I loved that aspect. Definitely 4-star, not my favorite of all time. Definitely a very, very good read. I strongly recommend it if you're into that type of thing. 4 stars. And then our last book is The Beast Within. This is actually by Serena Valentino, and I made a mistake. I read this. My husband gifted it to me along with some of the other books in the collection, which is basically like a Disney story retelling. And I had I've read it for years. So again, it was part of my Clear Your Shit readathon. I think this was a book that was gifted to me. I don't remember. But I did read that for this reason. But I thought this was the first in the collection, and it's actually not. The retelling of Snow White and the Evil Queen is the first one. I don't think that matters. I think it's just a retelling of each individual story. So this was a Beauty and the Beast retelling. So clearly, if you know the story of the Beauty and the Beast, we have Belle, who's this lovely maiden, and she loves to read, and she trades places with her father to stay in the Beast's kingdom, and the Beast is under this curse, and if he can get somebody to fall in love with him as he truly is in the Beast form, then the curse is reversed, and we all know that story. But this is okay. I gave it 3-star. I want to say this is more of a middle grade than a YA. It probably is, and I'm probably just misclassifying it, so if I am, I apologize. But the whole story here is more of the backstory of the Beast. So basically the Beast was this beautiful prince, and he was engaged to this beautiful woman who he thought was a princess, then turns out that she wasn't. So he kind of like dumps her and like, go off, be poor, be whatever. And she actually curses him. And then what happens is the curse that we know to be with the flower, the rose, and the last petal falls, and your days will end at that point, was actually perpetuated more by the 3 sisters. And honestly, the 3 sisters may have been the ones to put the curse. I don't remember. Or they may have been the ones to make it a time frame so that he wouldn't be able to turn back or something. I don't remember. So it wasn't the greatest book because I don't remember all those things. But it was really cool because it wasn't just this fairy princess queen with magical powers. It was the fairy princess queen magical person with the 3 sisters, and the 3 sisters are doing a lot of the behind the scenes trying to make it so that the Beast does not reverse his curse. That's the whole gist. So these are the 9 books that I read in November. December, I read a lot more interesting books. I hope you stick around for that one. But thank you guys for joining. If you liked any of these books, definitely talk about them in the comments below. If you have recommendations that are similar to some of the ones that I mentioned I really enjoyed, let me know. But otherwise, thanks so much for watching. I'll see you next time.